Tombalame Sanjerum Bachi, Chabalame, Tanjurum, Jabalame, Kendurum, Jamne Kunchos, Sejiku Sanje Namji, Chue Tenpa, Tempa Nila Yangda, Tense Sanje Karisware, Demba Sware, Dembala Yena Kariore. Yena Nangsul Chidang, Nesul Jare. Nangsul Dela, Nangsul Chujen Chinyeba, Nesul Chuni Chitawas, Tesore. Nangsul Carere, and Tedra Nami Chudda Tamje, Tabatongoyer, Nangsul, Tawakata Chaja, Shinane, Deshetamjem, Tabatongoyer, Metabatongoyam, Metabanyoyam, Sarje Tamje, Dongal. Youngayamar, Dawan Youngayar, Youngayamar, Dawan Dawarsangayar. A Chutamche Topamar, Dedana Chudda Tamche, the Shake Chudda Tamche, Tapa, Tapa Samasiba, Dembator, Dembarer Tuba. Anne, Tesson, Telacare, Nangsul, Nangsul. Tan Nangsul te Karinawati Dembaretamar. Hari Nawati Demba Yena, then Nesul Sente, young Miss Butcher. Yena young Nesula, then Nesul Qualatan Kaziship. Thank you, Catherine. Where's Catherine?
I'm here. That's all. Shall I translate?
Yeah.
So the Buddhas have taught the Dharma, and they taught it in terms of the two truths, correctly and genuinely in terms of the two truths. That is to say, what in fact did the Buddha teach? The Buddha taught the Dharma, and the Buddha taught truth, actually. That's what the Buddha taught, truth. And if we were to try to classify truth, we can say that there are two aspects: the way things appear, and then the way things actually are. The way things appear it refers to all of the things that there are, which appear in their manifold ways, all of the many, many different appearing objects. And then the nature of those things, the way those things truly and actually are, is the natural state. And so what is it when we speak about the way things appear to us? How, in fact, do those things appear? Well, when we look at phenomena, when we look at all of the things around us, we see them as being things which are lasting, things which appear to us as being in some sense permanent or lasting. And when we think about this from the perspective of the four seals of the Dharma, actually, we say that all phenomena, the Buddha said that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, but that's not how we see them. When we look at all conditioned phenomena, we experience them as being lasting. We see them as if they were things that last. That is how they seem to us. That is how we experience them. We don't experience their impermanence. That's not how we perceive and experience all of these things. And likewise, when it comes to defiled phenomena, although they are, in fact, suffering, that's not how we perceive them. We don't perceive them that way. We think this is nice. That's how we relate to and perceive phenomena which are, in fact, defiled phenomena. And when we look at all phenomena, actually, all of these compounded things, it's not just that we think they are going to last, which is not true. It's not just that. But when we look at those things, these compounded phenomena, we think they're real. We believe that they're real. We believe in and experience them as being real, and we think they're somehow truly established. So that is the way things appear. That's the way things appear to us. Now, the question then becomes, is that how they are, or not. So this is the way things appear to us. Is this true or is this not true? That's the question. If the way things appear to us is true, then there's no need to even get into the question of the true nature of things, right? Because the way they appear to us already is true. There would be no need. It would be kind of impossible for there even to be somehow a real true nature of things. But here, our topic is not just the way things appear to us, but the way they truly and actually are.
뇌책 최탐제 딱발에 삼 맞죠? 땅진 생태 대 노르밤 출바 야나 셰자라 몽바 셰제 생일을 몽바 제마치시 마심바 낭술데 내술이 상송한테는 출바 출술지 메닥과 이 신발라 딱발에 서비 땅진디 출바지들이 그 출여도 매 나랑게 딱쳤다나 나랑게 생야지리 텔라 지 산지 송상 이 댕기레 상노지 시체고 옵니다 소소 남주 셔럽 제바체나 뒤치게 최탐 준비다 보인 거래 산지 가르소를 뒤치에 탐지네 메다고 송알 대가래 산지식가래 다들 르바당 거래 르바데 뒤치게 최탐지 최지 메다바인데 그 남이야 딱 거가 매비치를 쓰겠는데 깨찍찍 딱요 말 깨찍찍 딱요 말 그 남이야 딱 거가요 말도 딱바래 삼대요 대 르바래 다 숨바데 메다바인발에 임바데 셰바자 마세 고고래 들 맹악서 롱당지 르바다니 맹아다 숨을 땐네 되네 뒤셰게 최탐 지메다 바인발라 임바셰나 들라 가르세래 남주정게 셔라브레 짱보래 중보래 왜 내소를 덴파솔 두고 열다 산제케 송베기 최 회상게 자라체 세 덴파솔케 덴파 대송사 메타발라 딱바른 지소한테 몽송을 출송을 걸송을 노송을 근데 롱더지 직받으니 맹아도 숨을 떠네 안되더라 나와 최탐 되시기 최탐 메타바인 인술티하고 삼네 펜바쳐 보여 펜바카요서 전체 방법이 셰자는 셰제네 가르쳐 주지는 마몽바인 당 마치베 로 셔럽젠지 자가요 셔럽젠티 가르팽게래서는 시지 인술 내술 똑발라 펜토치 보지 딱 들을 때니 출발했어 라시 된들 때니 출대받아 하거나 출송하다 노송하다 몽송하다 걸송하다 생각이 발치를 대답이 발치야 지밤 몸은 몸밭에 셀거래 몸은 몸밭에 셀거래 제발라 같이 롱더니 맹아소만 되고 그래.
We look at compounded phenomena and we have this idea that they're going to last. That's how we relate to them. And that fixation on these things that appear to us as being somehow lasting, it's a mistake. It's a type of delusion. It's a type of confusion. It's a confusion with respect to that which we can come to know, with respect to a particular object of knowledge, that is to say, these phenomena. And what that means is that we're not perceiving things in the way that they are, in the way that they truly are. And that happens because we look at the way things appear to us and we have the idea that's how those things are. That kind of perception, looking at the way things appear and making the assumption that that's how they are, that is a form of delusion. That's one way in which we're deluded. Actually, we could say one form of delusion that we experience is precisely looking at impermanent phenomena and coming to the conclusion these things are going to last. They're permanent. And whether or not we are doing this personally is something that we can just check. When I look at all of these phenomena which are impermanent, am I making the assumption that they are permanent, that they're going to last? Am I doing that or not? You just can check your own experience and find out if that's how you're relating to phenomena. And you shouldn't just think, oh, the Buddha said all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, therefore that's how it is. That's correct. That's what the Buddha said. We don't have to just accept it simply because that is what the Buddha taught. We can and we should use our own intelligence, our own reasoning, our own logic to investigate and analyze. Well, you know, it is said that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. So is it like that, right? The Buddha said this. This is the words of the Buddha. These are the words of the Buddha, that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. However, we can use our own logical analysis, our own intellect, our own intelligence to examine. And the one way that we can do this is to think, okay, well, the subject here is all phenomena. So I'm going to consider the subject all conditioned phenomena. Now, they are impermanent. Why? Because they don't remain the same even for an instant. They never have the opportunity to remain constant or permanent or lasting, even for an instant. And yet, despite the fact that when we go through logical analysis, we can see that that's the case, we still fixate on them as being lasting. And we think these things are going to last. And so what that means is that once we come to go through this kind of logic and analysis, and we come to understand that that's the case, it's important for us to acknowledge and to say, okay, I know now that actually all of these conditioned phenomena are impermanent. I'm able to acknowledge them as being impermanent in the way that they are. But we need to move on from there, not just to know that intellectually, but to actually bring that into our experience through contemplation, through meditation. And that involves applying the pith instructions. So when we go through the practice of coming to these types of understandings like that of impermanence, all conditioned things are impermanent, we can rely on scriptures. So the words of the Buddha, we should also rely upon logic, our own logical reasoning, and pith instructions. And when we do that, when we use those resources to analyze conditioned phenomena, we can come to the real understanding that they are impermanent, that they are not going to last. And that kind of understanding is an intelligent one. It's smart, actually, to acknowledge that conditioned things are impermanent. Because what we're doing when we come to that conclusion, or the way that we come to that conclusion, is by pursuing the truth, looking for the truth, right? So when the Buddha says something, when the Buddha taught the Dharma, if we actually listen to those teachings and then we contemplate them and reflect upon them, what we're doing is we are pursuing the truth of reality. And so that means that when we go against those truths that we come to understand in those ways, when we look at conditioned phenomena and have this sense that they somehow are lasting, somehow permanent, then we can acknowledge that that is a form of delusion. It's a delusion, it's a mistake, it's confusion, it's wrong, it's incorrect to look at these conditioned things and think that they're somehow going to last. And the way to come to understand the way those conditioned phenomena truly are is, as just was mentioned, through relying upon scripture, also upon logic, and additionally upon the pith instructions. And this is what can allow us to relate to all of these things around us that we experience, all of these phenomena that appear to us. We can come to relate to them as being impermanent, to see that they are impermanent, that is the way they truly are. what's the point? What's the benefit of coming to relate to conditioned things in that way? Well, the first benefit is just that you're correct instead of being incorrect about the way these things are. You're just relating to them in an accurate way. The second point is that it's intelligent, actually. It's an intelligent way to relate to and engage with all of these things around us. Because what we're doing then is coming to understand the way these objects actually are. Not the way they just appear to us, but truly understanding the way that they are. And that's helpful. We have to know that we're making a mistake in order to be able to acknowledge that and clear away that incorrect perception. So if we know, oh, the way I've been relating to these things is diluted, it's confused, it's wrong, it's incorrect, then we can see this incorrect perception is this delusion. It's an obstacle for me. It's an obscuration. It's obscuring, it's veiling my perception. And then we have to clear away the darkness of that ignorance. We have to clear away the darkness of that ignorance. And the method for doing this, there are three things that we can use, three resources. One is scripture. The next one is logic and logical analysis, and then the pith instructions. We rely upon these three to clear away that darkness.
Sheje Netsula Mone, that Dumal Metapayon. Sheje Netsul Sende, Metapa Imbala, Imbate Shena, Tiki, Pento Chupayo. Pento Yubeke, Korotaka, Ribash the Shuchori. Tameta being insul Rakpatan Trawa, Shin to Trawa. Rakbe want to Dana and Sakbetama, come Chini Sagnaya. Namshi said, Sakbetama and Zebrin Juru Suarella, and the repeat Jebachanaya. Saks this Mesebazan, Mesibar. The repeat Jebachan. Mengala, Menga looked at channel, the color in you remember. Kasi Yunaya, or Yaldrea. She, Sandra, Ranshinchima, the Meseba Chiga, Memory. What hit of Nesu the Shena, Yantelepantogia. So, Sakbetaman in Zeppelin Juru. Sakbetaman in Jelvar Juru. Zelbam Seba. Dube Taman Dublin euros, Totangajon de duty or that. The choosing it something like a capital. Then they save Taman, showing euro, sorry. The correct oil necessary, what to go, Yams young Shimbari. Shed the Shimbari. In a Ticola and Tonoche. There's also the Metapa, Imbala Imba Shena. Tambote, Metapala, Metapa Imba Shena. Dancing in the Batma child, dancing in the Bacha, saying the Carrison, Shedan, Chaldo, Transom, Lomson, Major, Senna, Tandona Tanda, Zambilin, the Mediva Soya, Kazawati, Hajarton. Then Dungam, the Pachamut. Take it as a lot in your Zambi she the mail with our dog, the taper. Chimsana, she the mail with our taper. And the Tontan, on Sheraton, on their last over. Zambi Chuyana, Medewayana, Zawata, Nyoma Bicheva. Nyoma Bishawana Sone, Zabalil, Mantuda. The Mugeta, Name. That do it. So Ganga, Jigje, need to know that Zawati, grow a mixer. Miss and rich source in Yoma by Shank, the Langan but the Sion to the Mingy but ne Dramin, and a copy center. Ne. The name 망초 된들 때니 안에 다 먹게 사네 되리 어떻게 내다 먹게다 망초 그래서 다 찔러 찔려요 대든절로 거네 사 용화 사생한테 가르쳐 보시라래 사촌라다 신도 추 롱당 추당 추치보다 추당 추체 타이 잠수도 잡아 간간은 요파서야 그 자원자한테 암심티 영함티 소미요래 영어 영어 자원자한테 딱바이 상가 딱바이 최 딱바이 당진세 녀모가 망보집에 시집 당신 되죠 당신 대체 대텔라탄 되셔 탐전에 메타보 산지 소를 힘비 인술 리바데 제 메가다 숨 될네 야야 야 최내 지지대에 메타버래도 한보차 되네 네 되네 이제 마셔다 자 네 이제 태탈동 어때서 어때 되네 힘받아도 나 좋아 미 맞세배 옥차 강가 저완 렌치 강가 싫어 마시고 찌야들 사요 마시 사딘로 찍자매 말해 얘네야 다 먼저 지으려고 되기래 했습니다 아 말아서 몽데 또 삼샤버에 마도 끼찍 새는 이 맛이 팔팔로세 이 맛이 끼찍장 한테는 매워 되게요 말 아니 맛이 만들만은 얘를 새대 끼찍 아 치와는 얘를 전에 진단 로미 새대 아 당긴 메딱 백시야 메딱 바스한테 간디제 서르스는 디 라와디 chilol shashan parshana lungsep ke marmese tente yung khachi diang tan hakom lung ke sebla lama lawa chi parena teta tel tenden sane tena chi nga jon roe mi cheti tena she ne khande chi na yo chen khande chi che yo lol ta ya me bare subu thangbo ye ba lo chung chung shen ba yin ya te ta pa yo 메닥스 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 메닥 조시 생지 야 메닥버렌도 가나야 아빠면도 아 삼백이 쪼능 질레비오나 쪼나 텔 때네 아니냐 아니 내술 낭술은 거마 걸어잖니 내술 춘이 그 걸라 춘이 지 걸라 아 단하체게 춘이 걸라 로브종 전도 여기지 자용을 티차용은 텔카르스 그래서는 텔 쳐봐서 민라 쳐봐 묘모부 쩐도요 묘모부 쳐도요 묘모부 샹을 치 메다발라 빠빠를 삼네 묘모부 모부 펴도 직펠 이펠체 다 가도 참만 메다발랑 시이나요 딱대 삼 예, 당신 되게 되네 묘모부 펠 동안 망고 돼요 그래서 성상 메타파테 야야 일라 메타 야야 셈 코르켄테 쇼바레 쇼베 첸이테 메타파 야 가네 딱 보면 제베 타반네 칠로 사베 타반 세로 듀베 타반네 단도 음 가네 딱 되면도 셈이 야야 코르토는 텔레텐이 찌르 뇽 봐 카트로 땅지 딱딱딱 당진 내가 자 당진 내가 자유도 녀모가 제가 자라 탐지라시 그말 카트 진짜로 때문에 안 셈들 쉬워지 그 마치 베게 그 심지어 현지 셈라 당지 수준 여도 같을 때 라시 인지 싶지 다들 투도도 내가 말했다 다 말해 상 당시 담팅팅들 잡고 해도 아카 다 칸라 산 칸라 지다 산베게 되네 셈네 셈 인지 지지 인지 때문에 야더빈이 인지 짱버려 펜터 유빈이 인지 텔레 때네 샹라 펜터 제도 인지 텔레 때네 이 더바다 탐지시 베레 람난 렌투 그래 인더소다 메타 조시 세지 셈베 제요나 되는 메테 대답을 간사테 람로 람토 시브 코라 참 시겐틀리 달람 야가 람토르도다 람토 람로도다 람로 람로 람토 아직 시브 코라는 가 참도 낭술 예술에서는 앞에 걸로도 서랑랑 내 가르쳐 꿀짜질래 그래 랑그랑 같은 거 아, 잼바진게 짱버차 동버차 오호 다 람 라과 생들 신의 동안 뭔데 내가 영화에도 산 안에 람 말로 람 만들어 람 마들어 이네 야한테 람는 좀도 그래 근데서 다 그거 첨부 요래
When we relate to the way things appear to us as if that is the way they are, when we have that kind of perception towards things, when we are confused and deluded about the reality of the phenomena around us, the result of that situation is unending suffering. It's painful. And that's why it's so important for us to really acknowledge the fact that phenomena are impermanent, for example, just acknowledging them as being the way that they actually are. All of these conditioned phenomena, they are impermanent. And if we can come to know and to see and understand this fact, there's a tremendous amount of benefit in that. And we can use our own intelligence to understand what some of the benefits might be from coming to acknowledge things to be impermanent, which is the way they truly are. When we speak about impermanence, there are different ways in which we can relate to the impermanence of conditioned things. There's a very coarse level of impermanence. There's a more subtle way of coming to contemplate the impermanence of things. And then there's a very, very subtle way of in which things are impermanent that we can relate to. But on a very coarse level, as many things as you might accumulate, no matter how many things you accumulate, eventually they're all going to run out. That's just a very coarse way in which we can acknowledge impermanence. And if you just check, if you just examine a little bit using your own intellect, no matter what you gather together and accumulate, it's impossible that eventually all those things won't run out. That's simply the way things are. From the perspective of the tradition of engaging with the pith instructions, one way that we relate to this reality, this fact, is simply acknowledging that things aren't as meaningful. There's not really any core, any essence, any real meaning there when it comes to all of these things around us that we accumulate. If you really check, right, as many things as you may manage to accumulate and gather and gain, they're just going to vanish one after the other until nothing is left there anymore. None of those things that you can gather and accumulate in, conditioned phenomena in this way, none of those things can stay forever. They won't stay forever. And when we come to accept and understand that reality, it helps us. It helps us when we can come to know that that's true. And so really just contemplating the fact that everything that you could ever accumulate, no matter how much you manage to get to put together, eventually it's all going to run out. And then not just that, but everything that we ever build, it's eventually going to fall down. Whatever we build, no matter what we make, eventually it will collapse. It will fall down. Every single meeting eventually ends in parting. Like right now, here we are, all of us together, and after an hour or two, we'll go our separate ways, and we won't be here together anymore. And not just that, another very important point to remember is that birth ends in death. That's true. That's something that we know. That's something that we can directly experience. And it's simply a fact. It's simply a fact. And when we come to acknowledge impermanence, when we come to truly accept and acknowledge the fact of impermanence, then we start to get free from the grip, the powerful grip of fixating on things as being lasting. And that when we are free from that kind of fixation, the power of that kind of fixation, then we become free from a lot of afflictive emotions. Because that kind of grasping and clinging to reality and to the lasting, the idea of all these things as being lasting, that brings a lot of afflictive emotions. Anger comes out of that. Jealousy arises out of that kind of fixation on things as being lasting. Competitiveness, pride, hypocrisy, stinginess, all of these afflictive emotions that cause our world to be a not very peaceful place. They come out of that grasping and fixation to things as being somehow permanent or lasting. Our pride and our craving, our attachments, that brings so much strife in the world. If you look around the world, why is it that people don't get along in their homes? Why is it that we don't get along with our neighbors and in our communities, our countries, and even at the international level, at the level of the world? All of that kind of strife and conflict, the absence of peace in those kind of relationships, it comes from the negative emotions. It comes from falling under the sway of our negative emotions, being ruled by the afflictive emotions themselves. That's where war comes from. That's where famine comes from. That's where plagues and epidemics come from. These things, each one, they're interrelated. One leads to the next. And the reason that those things exist in this world is because we human beings have made them. We've done that. We create those circumstances. And the way that we create those circumstances is by falling under the sway of our afflictive emotions, being ruled by the negative emotions. The result, the ripening that comes from being ruled by the negative emotions is illness, epidemics like COVID, for example, wars, famines. That kind of circumstance comes from our afflictive emotions. And these kind of horrible circumstances, they are connected. One does lead to the next. And when it comes also to simply the elements in the worlds around us, like the earth element, our earth, right? It's such a precious, precious thing. And yet we ruin it. We pollute it. We pollute the forests. We have polluted the water, the wind, right? The rivers, the oceans. The pollution that's present in our ocean is a direct result of craving and attachment and afflictive emotions, that kind of desire. That's where it comes from. It's because of the negative emotions. And the source of that, those afflictions, that kind of craving, that kind of desire, that greed, right? The source of that is fixating on things as being lasting and permanent. Like, I am going to last. And that thing over there, which can be mine, is somehow a lasting phenomena. And that fixation precisely leads to, so fixating on things as being lasting, basically, fixating on things as being permanent and lasting. That fixation leads precisely to this whole cycle of negative emotions that result in all of these terrible circumstances in our world. So the Buddha said, you know, all conditioned things are impermanent. That's what he said. That's his statement. But we can analyze that. We can use our own logic and reasoning to analyze that. And we can also contemplate that through the pith instructions. And the way that we can do that, one way that we can do that is simply just by acknowledging this whole world around me, the world itself, it's impermanent. At one point, it came into being, right? And it lasts for a little while, but it's not going to last forever. Eventually, it's going to be destroyed, the whole world. And then there'll be a period of time where it's just not there. There's nothing there. Right? And so we can just think about that fact, like, oh, yeah, that's true. The whole entire world actually is impermanent in that way. And if the whole world is impermanent, then, well, certainly all of us beings within it, everyone who's ever been born, everyone who is alive and breathing right now, not just people, not just human beings, every being that has been born, that is alive at this moment, all of us are going to die. All of us are going to die. That's just a fact. And we have this idea that I'm going to stay around for a long time. Sometimes we get caught up in this idea, I'm going to last for a long time. I'm going to live for a long time. But that's delusion to really think about that. It's ignorance, it's confusion. In fact, it's said that our lives are getting shorter by the moment, in the same way that when the sun rises in the day, it's moving gradually every moment closer and closer and closer to the moment of setting. So our life is like that, actually. Every single moment we are coming closer, every moment, to the moment of our death. The human life is like that. It's impermanent. It does not last. It's just like a candle, like this candle right here. If you take it outside and set it out outside, if there's a little bit of wind out there, who knows how long it's going to last before it blows out. So our human life is like a candle in a windy place. It could be blown out at any moment. We don't know what condition is going to come about. We have no idea. We could become sick at any moment. We could meet with some kind of life-threatening condition at any moment. And you can't just count on age as being the factor that leads to death, because there are plenty of people who are healthy and young and die. We simply don't know. Any kind of condition could come about that leads to death. And that is the fact of the impermanence of our human lives. And when we reflect on that fact of impermanence, it does give rise to, it brings about a sense of sadness, actually. It's a little bit of sadness or weariness about this fact of impermanence. And when we start to think like that, when we think, oh, you know, everything around me is not going to last, my life also, all of these, there's nothing around me in terms of these kind of conditioned phenomena that is going to be truly lasting. If we feel a sense of sadness about that, then what that does for us is that it keeps us from getting so fooled by the way things appear to us. That is to say that they appear to be somehow lasting, permanent, and so on. We don't get fooled by that state or that condition of things appearing as lasting. And when that happens, then we start to become way more interested in knowing more about how things actually are. Right? We become interested. We're interested in learning about the nature of things. We want to know, how are things really? That's what makes us a Dharma practitioner. When we start to feel, I don't want to remain stuck with these negative emotions. I do want to change. I do want to transform. I don't want to be ruled by my own afflictions. That kind of attitude is what makes us a practitioner. If we look at all of these impermanent things around us and we think, oh, these things are somehow going to last. When we hold that kind of perspective, then that creates one negative emotion, which brings about another negative emotion, which brings about another negative emotion, and we get stuck in that kind of cycle. But contemplating impermanence has the benefit of allowing us to get a little bit out of that, to be freed from that. Because really the source of all of our afflictive emotions is this fixation on things as being lasting and thinking that these things are real, right? So believing that they're going to last leads to thinking that they're real. And that kind of grasping and fixation brings a lot of suffering in our experience, a lot of affliction. So we should think about impermanence a lot. We should think about impermanence again and again and again. And someone who is capable of doing this is what we call a Dharma practitioner. Someone who is capable of bringing the thought of impermanence to mind again and again. A Dharma practitioner is someone who thinks all of these things around me right here and now are not going to last. Birth will inevitably end in death. Everything that I accumulate is going to run out at some point. It won't last. Every meeting, every connection in that way will end in parting, in separation. Nothing lasts. Nothing is truly real in the way that I perceive it to be. And if we can think like that, the benefit of that kind of contemplation and reflection is that in general, it reduces our negative emotions. It reduces the power of the negative emotions, and we don't fall so strongly under their sway. It reduces, so when we let go of the grasping to things as being permanent and as being somehow real, that allows us a little bit of freedom from the power of the afflictive emotions. And when our negative emotions are reduced, the mind becomes much, much more peaceful. And when the mind is able to remain at ease in this way, when we see other people who are really caught up in their fixation on reality and on things as being lasting and permanent, when we see people who are caught up in that, then in their minds so tightly grasping and fixing and holding on to reality, then we feel, oh, how sad. We feel real compassion. We give rise to real compassion because we see that diluted perspective leading to suffering in others. And then we really give rise to a genuine sense of compassion, real compassion, not fake compassion, the real thing. And that's a smart kind of compassion, and it's a helpful kind of compassion. We can really benefit and help others when we give rise to that kind of attitude. And so that then, that kind of circumstance, starting with the contemplation of impermanence, leads us on the path, moves us towards the path that leads to liberation and omniscience. So this idea, this contemplation on impermanence and the sense of weariness that comes with this contemplation of impermanence, that kind of weariness, sadness, that allows us to reflect. You know, there's a saying, being on the wrong path or leaving the path behind, we wander in samsara. And we think about that in relation to ourselves when we start to acknowledge impermanence and feel a sense of weariness. We think, oh, that's what I've been doing. I've been on the wrong path. I've left the correct path behind. I'm wandering in samsara. I'm wandering in this cycle of pain. And then we start to realize, oh, well, I need to stop fixating on the way things appear and come to really learn more about the way things actually are. And then that becomes a sense of inspiration for ourselves, for our own practice. And it's very smart. It's very intelligent. It's very helpful for us. Seeing, oh, when I'm stuck on the wrong path, what that does is it leads me to future suffering, more and more suffering. That's painful. I don't want to do that. Right? I don't want to be on the wrong path. I don't want to leave the path behind. I don't want to wander in samsara. And then when we have that kind of interest, when we start to have those kind of perceptions, that's what pushes us. It gives us a really big push towards the correct path. And we will go on the correct path and we will follow the correct path. And so there's really a huge benefit in going through these kind of contemplations.
Temchen Chulpa 심체 출변 나와서 제네 오 마셔 팔들라 제네 그 팔들가 나와데 출변 나와래 출변 나와 좀 출랑 좀 보지 때나 니쿠네 니쿡스한테 광해 셔바 고실롱도 두디 잘네 아멜람세네 멜람나라 타티 니무가 나와나시 레차 강심 민도 타티 자주 가려야 받든 되는 거지 아 레오톰보 니다 니마다 나와 까르마나서 딱 강한 거 받든 거 신경 나네 대요를 대담바이 딱바이 서고 대값을 딱바이 담바이 상 딱바이 담바이 그래서 아나 가와다 두바다 직바다 트라바 나와 남바 나서고요 깝깔 밀람 상부 밀 값을 가토펠 밀람 뚝샤트인데 밀람 무해드려요 가시 짜는 아무튼 밀람 앙세스 앙네 밀람 세 앙세 잡해요 트루나레 들 밀람 닌툴 세데레 소자 트루베 주 트루나 준 트루나기 준티 마시카 파트라 니지 마리 시도요 트루나기 준티 트루나기 준티 티기 가지고 고거도 티슈퍼 쳐발라 롱잠마이 베릭백 산지도 줄라 릭백 더 잡아줘요 다 잡아채네 미든 바스한테 때 코깔아 가고요 메타 바스한테 콜레나 메타 베이비 인슐 야고 시세나 데더나 최탐지 라셔지 데버 마투 세한테 코알레 라보차 셴테 베베 사머 깔카버리 슌네타 세한테 마하 슌네타 세한테 단다 될 거를 마하스는 똥받침 버스 손에 남셔지 버리 요초 되게 초탐 제한신지 대포는 말 똥받침 버스 똥이서 마하슈네다 세 산제기 칠 니보다고데 저 코데보잖아 탑 냐랑 값을라 탑데 메텐 받았지 메탁 받았니 메상와다 숨딱 메받아 숨딱 메받아 시 어떻게 보게 되네 그거에 내수들 대해서 제바체요나 근데 메탁 받자 파율라 메탁 바임바다 메든 바임바 가르스 제바체는 두차롭던 두 요마로 왔다 이나야한테 그래 근데 난그 요마로 와 할로 캐트릴라 거기도 왜
거기도 rumje 거기도
도체 대소사 메탁바 생한테 콜레라버레 땡아도 냠소 용도 용심바레 메타바임비 인술텔 거야고 지예요나 미든 바세한테 콜레라고 차요 미든 바세한테 돈이 세게 초초지 초탐주 동반일에서 테마도 동반일에서 가능하지나 삼성 바이스도 출발생 가능하지나 상거로 출발생에 얘기 나온다 그 출발해 알아서기 나온다 다투라이 기사 라세 출발하고 다 이나야 그 대수치는 멜랑가 나온다 제가 제네지 파르도도 제 멜람 닌투르 파르도다 니 얘네 아주 초바초가 다 냠솔라에 달라 삼den지 파르도 세타 젬바다 셰셰 바이오게 땐데 때야야 이를 챈거야 돼 따따와 까딱 살제 시 이세데 챈거래 걔는 메타발라 메타바 두세 탐지 메타바에 베인 슈퍼야고 야야 삼다 사제 탐지는 뚱발로 서 사제 소리 두세 탐지는 메타보 사제 탐지도 뚱발로 다 리펙 잡았잖아 사제 탐지 뚱발로 인데 동아로 숨주란 시 비치를 샤반 두시 그 동안 주로 동아로 주 동아로 숨보 동아 임비 수디하고 저들 시무르 제바체나 사실 담비메다 임비 수 살고 라트 대소자 동아 숨지라시 비치를 써서 소자 땅 안쪽 안쪽 다 동아리 요에 그 잡았다 착당 모습이 시험할 때는 중요해요. 대나는 원줄 때 착신돼 착신 될 때는 시험을 내고요. 상당히 잡았다 뭐네요. 뭐네 출네 람로네 람골네 영어요. 이세가 거를 참는 동안 남바 나서봐. 대화지유나야 땀난게 대화 단지 준로야 그 대화 마도 대화 양 타보지 왜 그래 대화 양 타보지 고는 가르쳐 그래 용어 발라 타고 그래 말이 인생을 타고 그래 레뉴 출난을 타고 그래 레뉴 출난을 마타르게 파르들 동안을 못해 매봐 용 탁주에 말 그 동안 때에 대답 몽바티 산지 주소와래 나이 추라 타르베 람도 타르바 생데 타르세 마리 인질레 타르베 타르추 탈룩 타르추 산지지 14고 순거리 얘나야 치랑케 타르 제거라마데 치랑케 칠들 네게 타르바타 탐지 셈발라 네게 치랑 떼야게 갈 뇌바다 자반이네 요 말이스 마세베케 셴제기 잡용 거요 섬에 두 남여로 마시스 랑키랑 잡고레스 랑키람라 고 마코라지 랑키랑라 고요 고코르마타 아랑라 랑키 틴쳐버지 제고레 이 제술때 나이 쳐라 탈베 람텐치 탈바랑라 이버 셰버지 소소레 대소사 다 단당 희원나신 사제 탐제 동화우 소한테 리베케 제바체들 아리셔버에서나 당화숨지라신 이치를 세대 직제 때 맞으면 알아도 삼로다 당하라 르슨 일을 떼서 마대 와주요에 도다 짜와다 가르를 투도 제바야고 저는 딘진다 당진 일을 두고 이 덴바이 이 땅바이 다 차송 다 시송 다 매송 다 녀모 탐지 왼줄지 이 시자테 뭐네요 뭐 말이 마시네 뭐 대소사 롱지지 르바데니 명하다 송토네 도세 네 다 최선 건좀 야마르 당보트 얘네들 삼비 제바체 얘네 수섬도 주잖아 람산 섬도 유라테 그래 너나 루스 그렇게 때 뇽마 뭐 저거요 디지 톡렇게 때 뇽마 톡요 삼방에 받아 저방에 받쳐야 돼 뇽마 배치지 셴을 내가 쳐봤대 셴 잡을 내가 말이야 나랑 없어 쳐보지 나랑라 텔레는 잡제요 셰체네 셴을 치긴 봐 찍셔는 셴게 셈 두고 맞지 나랑게 되게 아자님 발랭에 봤었어래 그래서 네 사제 담배는 또 생각되나 아니 제반난 거
The experience of sentient beings is diluted. We say that sentient beings, their experience is a confused or a diluted experience. And that diluted experience is one that is present in our lives from the moment that we're born until we die in the bardo of this life. If we're caught up in delusion, we talk about the diluted experience of ordinary beings. And an example that can help us to understand what that delusion is like is, it's like when we fall asleep, right? At night, when we fall asleep, what happens is that the 5 sense consciousnesses dissolve into the all ground. We kind of faint a little bit for a moment. And then when we are again aware during the sleep state, it's in a state of dream. And the dream state is very similar actually to our experience in the dream state, rather is very similar to our experience in the waking state. It looks a lot like things look to us now. There's mountains, there's houses, there's buildings, there's people, there's big tall mountains. The sun and the moon shine brightly in the sky in our dreams in the same way that they do when we are awake. And so it's quite similar also in that we look around in our dream experience and we think that the things that we experience in the dream are real. We think that they are going to last in the same way we relate to our appearances and experiences in this waking state as being lasting and as being something that we think is real. And we experience a lot of emotions also in the dream state. Sometimes we experience a lot of happiness. If we have a dream that is very pleasant or pleasurable, then we can feel a lot of happiness in the dream. We have a good dream, or if we have a frightening dream, a nightmare, sometimes we wake up in the midst of still being caught up in that kind of fear and terror that's present in the dream. And so that dream state we sometimes call the state of double delusion, because it's an additional delusion upon the one that we experience in our daily kind of life. And that diluted experience, but it's a good example for us to understand what is meant by diluted experience, because diluted experience means experiencing something that's basically a lie. It's a falsehood. So our whole entire experience is something that's not really real. It's false. It's fake. And as long as we are caught up in dualistic ignorance, then that kind of diluted experience that we undergo in the waking state, also in the diluted experience of sentient beings, will be present. We cannot be free from that kind of diluted experience as long as we're caught up within dualistic ignorance. So it has to be something that we eventually must come to destroy and to be free of. Because otherwise we're so caught up actually in these things, in our experience of reality as being somehow real and lasting. And it's important that in order to come to understand the way these things actually are, rather than being caught up in our diluted experience of them, that in the Buddhist tradition, we don't just rely upon scriptures and scriptural statements, but we also, as Buddhists, rely upon our own logic and our own reasoning and our own examination and analysis of things to come to understand that. And because it's hard to understand immediately that all phenomena aren't real, that's not easy to understand. It's a lot easier for us to understand that things are impermanent. So the contemplation on impermanence is very, very important and helpful, because first of all, it's way easier than just approaching directly the idea of the lack of reality of phenomena, but also because when we do understand that things are impermanent, we already understood kind of part of their emptiness. So we talk about, shunyata, maha shunyata, emptiness, great emptiness being the nature of reality, the way things actually are. And that understanding is one in which we come to accept that everything from form up to including omniscience, like the whole spectrum of phenomena, is something that's not truly established, not truly real. That's difficult to come to just immediately have an understanding of. But what we can do is start with an understanding of phenomena as being impermanent, because that brings us closer to the understanding. It's a step towards understanding that those phenomena are not truly real. When we look at the approach that the Shravakas, in particular Buddhas, use in the Shravakayana, that vehicle of Buddhism, one of the methods that is used to traverse the path is simply this reflection on the absence of permanence, the fact that phenomena are impermanent, conditioned things are impermanent. Also contemplating their lack of reality, contemplating the fact that things which appear to us as clean are not truly clean or pure, and also the contemplation on the absence of self, where we normally think that there is a self. If we really investigate and examine with a little bit of intelligence, then we can see that these phenomena, these objects which appear to us otherwise as being somehow lasting and permanent, under a little bit of analysis, we start to see that they don't hold up in that way, that they're not actually permanent. And likewise, if we examine a little bit as well, then we see that they're not truly real. If you really get into it, even the most subtle atom doesn't have any existence. You can't find anything truly existent there, even down to the tiniest little atom. That's more difficult. Easier to understand is simply the fact that these things are impermanent. That's very clear. That's very easy for us to understand. But when we understand that impermanence, it brings us closer to an understanding of the absence of reality, the lack of reality of these things. And so we've understood, as we said, kind of a part of the teaching on emptiness. So we might wonder, well, what does it mean when we say that all phenomena are emptiness? What is it when we say that, that we're experiencing delusion? Well, I just gave an example of what it means to say that our experience is a deluded experience. The example is that of a dream. That's a good dream. That's a good example, like when we're asleep and dreaming. What we're experiencing is delusion. Another example is being drunk or intoxicated by some kind of drug like datura. Those examples also help us to understand the kind of what it means to be deluded. But the easiest example was really the example of a dream. So understanding, we know that what we experience in a dream is not true, it's delusion. That example can help us to understand what is meant by delusion in our waking life as well. And so then we talk also about that's the bardo, of this life involves this kind of deluded experience. And there's also meditation within the bardo of this life, the bardo of meditation. And meditation experiences are those kind of experiences where we use a little bit of vigilance and carefulness and conscientiousness and mindfulness, and remain involved in a type of contemplative or meditative state. So we can contemplate, for example, the 4 seals of the Dharma. So the 4 seals of the Dharma here, the first, that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. So we can think about the fact that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, that all defiled phenomena are suffering. And we can come to understand these points, not just by contemplating the statement that the Buddha made, but actually through using logical reasoning. And so with respect to the second of these points, the fact that all defiled phenomena are painful or are suffering, the reason that that's the case is because they have the nature of the 3 types of suffering. The 3 types of suffering are the all-pervasive suffering of being conditioned, the suffering of change, and the suffering of suffering itself. If we come to examine and know the experiences of defilement to be as they are, if we really investigate carefully and in detail, then we see that all defiled phenomena are in fact suffering. It makes sense, it clicks in our experience when we really investigate and examine. It is the case that all defiled phenomena, like our afflictive emotions, they are painful. And it is the case that when we are caught under the sway of attachment and hatred and delusion, when we come under the sway of those afflictive emotions, that leads to pain. That is a painful experience, and it leads to pain. The ones among those that are most obviously apparent are attachment, for example, or attachment, which leads to anger, to aggression or hatred. And the source or the root of both of those is delusion. It's delusion, this kind of lack of clarity. And when we get caught up in those afflictive emotions, then we are on the wrong path. We have left the path behind, and we do wander in samsara. And that wandering in samsara is a painful experience. Anything that we might perceive as pleasurable is only seemingly pleasurable. It's not real pleasure. It's not lasting pleasure. It's going to change, right? It won't last. It's not genuine. And because of that, it's not genuine pleasure. If we want to know how to attain lasting happiness, if you want to know how to do that, well, here's how. You have to get rid of the negative emotions. We have to be free from the negative emotions, totally free from the negative emotions, free from karma, free from the negative emotions, and free from deluded experience. That's what freedom is. Freedom from those three afflictive states. Because as long as we're caught up in karma and the negative emotions and deluded experience, as long as we're within that sphere of experience, suffering never ends. It just does not ever come to an end. And so it's important for us to become free, to free ourselves from that karma, from those afflictive emotions and that delusion. And we have to know, oh, I've been deluded, I've been confused, I've been on the wrong path, or I have not been following the path. I have been caught up in dualistic ignorance and fixating on things as being in a way that they aren't. I've been fixating on things as existing in the way that they appear rather than in the way that they actually are. And the Buddha taught this clearly. He said, listen, I taught you the path that leads to liberation. And liberation, again, what is liberation? Just to be clear, again, liberation is liberation from dualistic ignorance. It's liberation from karma, from the negative emotions, and from confused experience. The Buddha said very clearly, I have taught the path that leads to liberation, but you have to traverse that path, he said. I can't just give you liberation. I can't just hand it over to you, give you liberation and omniscience. I don't have the capacity. I don't have the power, the ability to do that. And you shouldn't ever think that anyone could do that for you. You should never look outside of yourself for some kind of real lasting protection. Real lasting protection is not something that you find outside. It's something that you have to do for yourself. You must be your own protector. You must, and the way to be your own protector is not to fool yourself. The way to be your own protector is to be kind to yourself. And the way to be kind to yourself is just as the Buddha said. He said, I taught the path that leads to liberation. Now, whether you follow it, that lies in your hands. So following that path, that is what we have to do. That's how we get rid of suffering and become free from suffering. So again, all defiled phenomena are painful, are suffering. That's something that if we investigate and we using our own intelligence, our own logic and reasoning, we can come to see that that is the case. We can come to see that that is the case because those defiled phenomena have the nature of the three types of suffering. And so if I check a little bit, if we just examine our own experience, and we think, okay, if I check my own experience and I feel that there's something that's a little bit uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable, mentally uncomfortable, if I don't feel good physically or mentally, where's that coming from? That's coming from this kind of fixation on things as being lasting, on things as being permanent, and the kind of afflictive emotions, attachment, aversion, and so on that arise out of that. That's where it came from. It came from our afflictive emotions, and they came from delusion, from confusion or delusion. And so the method to become free from that kind of experience is 1, to rely upon scriptural statements, 2, to analyze them, use reasoning, and then 3, to rely upon the pith instructions, to actually apply that in our own experience. So basically, the method is study, reflection, and meditation, but performed and practiced together as a unity, not just keeping one outside of the others, but actually practicing them all together. So first we listen to the teachings, and then next we think about it. And then finally, we apply it directly to our experience. And if you do that, immediately your mind will transform. It brings an immediate change in our experience. So again, if I notice that my body and my mind are a little bit off, a little bit stirred up, a little bit uncomfortable, where did that come from? What does that? The negative emotions. The negative emotions steal our happiness. They're the thief of our happiness and our ease. They cause negative thoughts. They cause negative actions. The negative emotions cause all of that kind of painful activity, physical and mental. And so when you hurt someone, we sometimes think of hurting someone else as being something that hurts the other person, but that's not exclusively true. Yes, when you say something mean to someone else, when you speak harsh, painful words to them, it does hurt them, but it also hurts you. Harming others is a very powerful form of self-harm, because when we hurt others, speaking harsh words to them, for example, we also create negative habits for ourselves. We create negative karma within ourselves, and we're perpetuating that kind of cycle of pain and suffering. So if we check, if we really investigate, is it the case that defiled phenomena are suffering? The afflictive emotions, are they suffering? Yes. If we check and investigate and examine, that is absolutely the case.
Meden jume Chokyi Nyima Rinpoche matu na dembatu do den dembatu tak takpata duche takpa dempa jura me beranshi tu sam tutlechene ade ngarang semtilune dorna de lonche sibi danger denzo Ratit number ki gala, ratit number gala. You be dangzi, jay dakwatavi songare. Therefore, the dangzi de garang shiri. The jay dana garboyore. Inaya ratit not honey, jay masore. Betina she be danger to Dewa yo marelaption bar. Dewa inaya. 네, 텔레테니 동안 남은 나서버지. 지지 이투 치용 거래. 치용. 동안이 요령 거래. 대려서 다 대답이 이렇게 짜와도 대바이 딱바이 딘지 땅진 대용 거예요. 대단 랜드 부모티브 값서 질 착신 기초와 중에 잡아라. 단 내롱줄 착받다 셴받기만 트와 중 메닥받다 메든바 메닥받다 메데버 공유도 되게 셈텔래 세그내 말은 좀좀 잠시 말고 셴 대바면 촉시 샤이 촉시 셴데 니 숨가 가르쳐 숨쉬게 편도하면 니니 고그래 니자 고그래만 숨쉬 가르쳐 송조 생각 가 말해 송조 생각 메가와 안에 대열 롱줄래 샤신들 하시 마시고 뭐그 내처럼 대나신 맞아 더한 발에 되세세 뭐가 파르기 착세 주셔서 대지 착세야 자와데 제보도 포에 못 제모통 뭐에 포티 제보통 따뜻을 착세 대화에서 짱만 제보에서 짱만 짱진 짱만 있었네요. 된다고 아마 제가 쟤는 매장했다. 짱만 요즘 공부 르인데는 르인데 매장비 짧아서래. 짧아당시래. 나또 차라네. 진짜 차다 나다 로아데 맥셔로 주마다 칼마다 대신도 돈을 로아 미기 매장한테 미기 지신의 지주입니다. 지신 지주를 니들 거라. 저 딱도 말하는 게 냐르대요. 저 딱도 또 사냐를 강 값이 있네요. 상주 룰을 되는 상주에서 해야 돼. 맞아 딱지 맞아는데 딱지 싫었다고 말했다. 상관없다. jalme nyardiyor. Eso inaya changma yiso. Mesawa sama. Ta mesawa inbe insulti ya mo shenyo na ane döse de ma chado. Mesawa jesum ju suru se gogu yore. La borto Thailand Burma la so bala te chakshe de tanda shu yore. Into gogu yore tene döshak sepate sebe wando mato wande ane döye lonjo la megawa chokshé ya pochile. ane tendele tene ane shilake tinge je nyamsola la tondong ya polle. Tendele tene ane jushu chiriyong chimayo dachon pe khopasa tanda ya talenta barba de Sri Lanka. ane tane ki tene che lapa chutubi lapa de shisha tinge jenda shirabji labi nyamle nane dachon pe ane tane ki dachon ba 원som 지하유 봐 뭐야 말해. 어쨌다 봐 영향이 싸운다고 라 곰는 말해. 나 다니 말해. 그럼 왜 그때 소리 잡았지? 왜 그때 소리 내장 마한테 상말에 삼바티 너도 무슨 대회 런치에서 밑에 말에 메타 말에도 사면도 샘들 로제 샘 고양 보죠. 자신께 쳐봤던 대세도 막 같이. 근데 제어도 다 샘이 된 샘플이 와요. 샘플로 안 되게 지고. 되게 지고. 실하게 냠내 chen. 근데 다쳐봐. 산지 벨로는 다티다 요면도 똑같이 다래. 내가불러 동거지. 라는 동거 되게 대리 시야는 동거 되게 대리 나보다 탑지신데 고발라 그래 고발 메터 비자와야 티를 좀 봐. 뜻도 그것도 랑식 좀. 다 티가라 티네. 이 상가 나시게 라라라면은 뭐보다 안다면은 뭐 그게 요 말을 때 얘네야 아테네 야트니스 그리 근데 뭐 투지신 민네 띵이지 아마 이래 뭐 뭐야 대신도 신라기 냠내 체네 다주도 소유 집에 마스비 에 람테 라체다비 람테 카사 카실라 이 약이요 야 카사 카실라 야 대마치 빌람세 년종도 조시 대인대 티간라 참니지 자주 셈로버시 세게 탑탐지 나는 초도 쳐보데 닝지 쳐보 마하슈 마하카루나 샤랍 탐지 나는 초도 쳐보 마하슈네데 갸н 오 티니 냠슬완은 사주 람아 전 자주 쳐보 컴파도 라운드 추고 현주 수고스게 완주려들 대대바 침배 나세 낙악세 어디 별다 맞아 유도 현달라 샤다 차베 텔라티니 자주 주주 난주 안에 주라서 왔다 주마보여 다 대저 주 냠레체 다 토모티비 냠레체 봤다 제라 갈치슈데 년종들 년종여 그 자원다 메템바다 메탁바티 야보 삼용 메테가나 메상와데 야보 셰요 테가나 다메테 야보쇼 딱 매번에 딱 이제 로트 너르데 버셔 다좀 거바터 다 테퍼 치를 그까 뭐다 다들 좋아하는 것이 탑다 싫어니 대답을 소주기 토니 냠슬라고 요래 탑다 타베 싫어 몸바래 싫어부터 타베 탑다 몸바래 탑다 인지테 인지 좀 마셔 봐 임바땅 주든 송 서버고 준비 좀 염바샤 탑팅 알을 때네 근데 셔럽티 잘못된 얘기 내로 또네 텔레콤바트 검은 완전 사주선 아무튼 당해요 봐 람가세 가테 파라상가 뭐디서 하세 소시 바로도 양타고 소시 지수시 소야 어떻게 대답은 없어요 다 상가세 부주 나한테는 맞아 그치 남비 잡고라 셰프 다르메 받아고 줬대 자주 주주 때tes 자판라 다리오리 자나도 때tes 다리오리 자판라 때네 that's 다리요리. 이내 왕long 트리 유바트스 간디에 시금니다. 다 별라. 질 데네스. 안데 사과르트 딱 주디시. 사과르트 주디시. 냠네 쪼어도 주디시 지요. 다 주디시 냠소 라야 챵바라 다 메타 메바테 다 먹고 다나세. 다때 깔레 카슈데 티레. 안년주 조시데 레라. 텔레장 심제 탐질레 참는지 자주 심 신토 가지고 때문에 터바좀 냠네 제약이 심메르시 시자는 지대 어때 그 줄을 제약을 하고요. 이나양 상하 노리트 발라 또다 대열래라고 잠내지 찬수스 야고지 줄을 제네 텔레는 돈이 또 도요. 전부 동반이 또 도요. 잠내지 찬수스 되게 새로 토면에서 이들 내동답이 대다도요. 손놈 소침부 대사도요. 대야 자주 시험때 깝걸요. 깝까면 줄어야면 저 딱도 심지어 탐질을 대화인데 대외주 된도로 동아리도 잠들로 텔레 잠 인지에서 잠 자주 샤마 얼마 날마 줄어야면 야고 줄이 쨌도는 텔레 때는 소 대사 대파 대다 텔레 때는 살아 사다 람지 똑바탐지 줄이제 그러 라우르 줄을 째트베게 싸워도 되도록. 나 상하 노르지트 봐서 표주를 다르요. 진 다르냐 다 잡을래 가서 갈라 다르게요래. 되게 가지고 간게 신고야 돼. 상하게 냠레데 제 시자와 더버데 따와지고 그래. 따와돼야 냐랑게 따와잡게 되게요 말고. 택신게 따와지 신고야. 그래서는 상하대 택신게 제작하지. 택신게 제작하지. 대소서 따와대 웃음이 가야로 하지. 저도 오마테도 마치 순서표 나왔다 셈세야 돼. 나 셈지 촌촌이 랑어셰버 진실로 소야 돼. 라지 그서 촌도 라템바터 진실로 소도 호텔이라. 소자 대소자 시티를 주고 시티를 찍던 jel네 얘네 플라곤바다 나다왔다 땡긴생 힘냠네. 대신이지 때문에 꼰도 나올 때에 저희 띵지 띵인지 넘어선 코 옥송도와 코 엄버셔버도 띵인지 저한테 맞춰서 준 카리요 제는 연대 카리요 다 상하 도시 때문에 냠내지 제게는 창고에 가르쳐리 있었는데 온통 느끼려서 온통 느끼요 또 하나 가르고 그래서 따와줄 거 따와도 가르치고 그래서 최선 따위로 엄마 맹아글로 랍 조는 젤라포로 따로 좀 가요 로아체 때네 웃음게 따와라 니셔요 여바에나 대된 딜을 토네 상아 대해서 얘기하면 어느 뜻이 통통 최죠 초티사 데립테다 제불람트 샤바서 거든 이제 단도 르방호 나타도 아니 셈 서로 대동 남도 이시지로 받잖아 안 사달람 살람테 거라 민출로 받잖아 라우 칠리지라 사제 로단다베나 로제다 다제다 샤게 송도 되게 얼마보 카줄레 대화 룬자루드 대화서 룬맹어와 줄어서 따뜻해요 룬맹어 아서 진짜 영 타줄이 왜냐면 제술배 파사고 슈슈데요 다 냠슬라 만화때 알아서라 알려요 소다 다티 냠스야 볼라 토에게 자원도 다 먹고 타나지 다 먹고 타나서인데 제시 자갈 하고요 얘나야 다 먹고 자와 찍 같은 temper 찍 이런 temper 같은 데 가르쳐 가서 산진 지대적 값소 마페나 담비축 소가 말 담비축 마소는 담비축 din 지대적 하면 내가 말 지대적 하면 담비축 간다 내 매너 소로 나 초선 제약 가지고 가거든요. 그러면은 와도 탈바 삼지 셈바세요. 용해요. 계속 사진지 꺼진 챈다. 그 꺼진 챈 되는 연대 가려서 나한테 천지 이게 연대요. 아, 나타다 지sen시 하는 것도 동안 탐색게 나한테 시샤라 뭐한테 책 제한테 쇼스로 리서치 I love you because you love me. You love me because I love business. In the chat room. 산책에 내지대 잠내지 자주 쌤 총론도 잘로 총론도 잘로 아 산책을 시도 대바에 여다한다 산책을 하여도 되는 내가 같이 연애야 산책 그거는 또 잠내지 집도 잘로 총론만 총선말로 그래서 맞죠 인치 뭐이고 당또 마스베 시럽 심부되게 저 다다요 산지 주소be 수술 센서 아까 싸루로요 아 싸루로 이제 최용어나 산지 같은 그바 체르 타르바트 탐지심을 컴파토에 실장 짱말 첸딜라 지iten지 감딜라 첸딜라 디지 거든요 얘는 처와 방어지 잠년지 여가지 처와 방어지 텐데 냠는지 제 맛이 맛도 지금 동안 문제 매봐. 야로야 생이지. 어이야 다 줘버려. 생이야 다 줘서 유세 가르쳐는 드라 밀라 녀모가 가려야 요래 다다야 요래. 드라 미기 녀모가 슈슈를 쳐 말해. 이난 드라 밀라 녀모가 될 로바치기. 와마 마트고스도 도장 요래. 걔는 다돈 동평이 요래. 걔는 맨메다 생죠. 다 가리요 저런 신글. 이래서는 다 누구 진이지 내가 그거 통다 그래서 난가 라 하루 든든한 시시 라트에 단 진짜 초샤도 샤마고 다르요 다른 지지 감들에 네네 다 술 팽겨서는 너 미기 밀 팽겨다 대한 잡는 콜라직 맞아요 콜라 먹어요 계속사다 연습 친구 감들 세미 시빌람 처음에가 시바세의 인지를 처음에 세미 시빌람디 잠리 최용라 대답을 때는 세미 시빌 람데 게다둑데 냠서 람토나 내가 지킨식한데 디지데 봐. 딱现在 신감라고 저 용거래. 대 맞춰는 지킨식한 냐를 통치 좀 차차하래. 냐를 통치 나나야 독셔지. 쌤이 그 깎아매도 매봤어. 탈왜 둔테신 둘코로 제때 관라쳐 둘마다 매봤지. 락도요. 된대게 둘쳐요. 대소사 대세네 산지주 비 최대 최소되다. 완전 좋아 미게 lokhamam 매밤 셔럽을 뜨네 냠소 랑소 카사 소요. 또 세치아바셔도 오 토모티브기 냠소 랑소 티크. 아 텔레 gaba tende chi duwa, gaba tele ten dribu tende chi tobu duwa, tishen ke lam lan ju no gaba tende chi duwa, gaba tele ten pento tende chi duwa, dribu tende chi duwa. Sanga dorji teme nyamle chebala mene meta ba chi chi, tawa yang taba chi si sengo duwa. Tenga chun dor tende tawa te, toni nyingchi kona yin, chuen na kunchi tsawa ne, toni nyingchi kona yin, toni nyingchi to chom na palaji ya, 알완죠. 돈이 인게 마토는 배드된 코르 참 돔티는 되요. 돔. 인제 냐랑 그 값을 인제고 대세 그 값을 인제고 상각 값을 인제고 아때 인제 냐랑 그 값을 인제 심지어도 동아리를 하시 심지어도 동아리를 인제고 대파 침백 그 값을 심지어도 이렇게 생기시라 대신 뭐여서 대신 뭐 제재 대신이 있는다. 이제 원천에 다 봐인다. 로고 출도 급소래서 상하게 값을 때 심전남의 산진이 언제 로그를 테마타서 산진 어서다. 근데 산진의 심전이 진짜 버려. 산진에다 Dharma tamji lam dupshin kumare. Simjam mendo sosa dupjan chese yulo yomare, jimba dansa yomare, sheba komsa yomare. Sota Dharma tamji lam dabar chabala. Sanje simje kati shawa yimba, jingwa. Simjam tamji ranga pama macheba meba sosa, pama tubu jingwa. Simjam tamji ki semji shili, chuyi tishi yene yeba sosa, woyo chane, juso sanje ta, 로루 섬정기 sembi 시대 직박 직장인바 지금 매봐 로버지도 마다 받아 다 받아 마다 다가 신도 다서 비와 마다 받아 다 받아 신도 다 들을 때는 정리 받아도 막 카서버 서버인데 아니 진이 시대問題 좀 내로 제다에 챔비시 이 시대에 세세 진이 베기시 챔비 시대 진이問題 좀 달라 사제 세계 다 들을 삼샤는 야사 말에 되는 맛이 다 제가 담보 있죠. If listeners are have passion or excited and listen, then worth it. Otherwise, I feel I only say myself or something.
We're listening because it's worth it.
What?
We are listening and it is worth it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. These illusory, unreal phenomena are fooling us. They're deluding us. We look at things that are not real and we think these are real. We look at things that are not going to last and we think that's going to last. And so we relate to compounded phenomena which are impermanent as being somehow something that will last. We look at compounded things which are unreal and we relate to them as if they were real and unchanging. And we think that they are like that. And in that way, we are fooling ourselves. We simply fool ourselves. And we get caught up in the pursuit of the sense pleasures, wealth, and enjoyments, all of these pleasures, so-called pleasures of samsara. It's said that consuming the pleasures of samsara is like licking honey off a sharp blade. Yes, honey is sweet, and it does taste sweet when we taste it. However, because we're licking it from the sharp blade, then that cuts our tongue, and that's painful. And so this example makes clear that, yes, the pleasures of samsara aren't totally unpleasurable. There is pleasure there. However, that pleasure is very deeply connected with pain. One painful experience that leads to the next, which leads to the next. And so we need to understand then that the root of that kind of suffering that we experience is precisely the fixation on things as being real and lasting. This is real. This is going to last. And when we think about this kind of practice from the perspective of the general vehicle of Buddhist teachings, then in that tradition, the focus is on coming to have a sense of appreciation and contentment with what we have. Looking at things and thinking, these things are unreal, these things are not going to last, and therefore I don't need that many of them. If I just have enough to eat, if I have enough to wear, if I have enough to, I have a place to stay, then that will do. And having a sense of contentment, actually, this freedom from the need to pursue excess. We think, oh, well, I've got what I need. I don't need 3 of those, 2 sets of clothing is fine, and so on. We have a sense that what we have is enough. We have a sense of contentment, and that frees us from this kind of need, compulsion to accumulate and, to accumulate things. And when we have that kind of contentment, when it comes to the sense pleasures, this contentment, not having a need to pursue them further, then that opens up a space that allows us to practice more effectively. And likewise, here in the desire realm, there's a lot of lust, craving, between men and women. And that really comes down to thinking that that one over there looks pretty good, right? A man looks at a woman and thinks, wow, she's beautiful. Or a woman looks at a man and thinks, oh, he's so handsome. And that attraction based on perceiving the person in that way is what leads to a sense of craving and lust and so on here in the desire realm. But that's based on the idea that that object of my attachment is something clean. And if we check and examine carefully, it's just not true. The body, the interior of our body is actually, sometimes we just say it's a heap of impurity. The body is a heap of impurity. It's full of pus, it's full of blood, it's full of intestines. The things that we human beings find to be the most disgusting are human excrement and urine. And that is with us at all times. That is with the object of our attachment and desire at all times. When they are sitting down, walking around, eating, sleeping, talking, whatever it is that we do. We think the bathroom is a really gross place, but in fact, the bathroom, the contents of the bathroom are inside of our bodies at every single moment. We are never apart from them. And so we look at these bodies, the bodies of others, and we think, oh, that's something somehow clean and therefore attractive, and therefore we feel this sense of attachment and craving. But if we come to really acknowledge that these things that we perceive as being so clean and pure are in fact unclean, if we know this, like there's a contemplation that goes through all of the 36 impure substances that are present in the body. And there are Buddhist practitioners in places like Thailand and Burma and Sri Lanka who do go through these kind of contemplations. The tradition is still alive of engaging in this kind of contemplation. And the effect is it reduces our attachment and craving. And when the attachment and that kind of craving and lust is reduced, and also when our attachment to the sense pleasures, wealth, and enjoyments is reduced through contemplating their impermanence and the lack of reality, then that leads a practitioner to a state of contentment, which becomes an extremely beneficial basis for the practice of shamatha and vipassana. And through cultivating these meditative states, it leads to a state of joy that comes through practice. And practitioners who train in this system of practice move through the stages of becoming a stream enterer, a once returner, a non-returner, and an arhat. They achieve arhatship through this practice. This happens in Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, through following the path of the three trainings, the foundational training in discipline, on top of that, the training in meditation, and then also the training in wisdom. This practice leads to the state of arhatship. Actually, really, there are arhats that you can go and meet in these places. There are many of them that we can meet. So this practice leads to this amazing result. And the real root of this, what is the root of this practice? Is this practice that leads to the result of arhatship? Does that come from visualizing the deity or reciting mantras? No, it does not. It comes from contemplating reality, acknowledging the unclean nature of things that are unclean. It comes from understanding that the sense pleasures and wealth and enjoyments are impermanent, and giving rise to just like letting go of attachment and clinging and fixation to those things. And then when we have that kind of contentment that comes when we let go of that attachment and that fixation, then it brings about this kind of genuine practice in which the positive qualities within our mind are able to unfold very naturally. And the qualities of meditation are able to unfold naturally, such that practitioners who train in this way become arhats. They arrive at the state of liberation in this way. And we say an arhat, a foe destroyer, a destroyer of enemies. What is the enemy? The enemies are negative emotions. The enemies are negative emotions, and that actually is always our enemy. It is what prevents us from achieving this state of liberation and omniscience. It is what brings suffering to ourselves and what brings suffering to others, and prevents us from arriving at the state of liberation. So this is the system of practice in the general vehicle of Buddhism. And it's not, the meditation practices that one trains in this system are not the kind of practices of deity and mantra that we find in Vajrayana. But there's nonetheless many, many kinds of meditation practices. Because our teacher, the Buddha, is so extremely compassionate, he taught so many different types of meditation that we can engage in that do lead to the result of liberation. Like, for example, the practices of shamatha and vipassana that are trained in the general vehicle of Buddhist teachings. That path is a wonderful path. And for some people, that path is the best one, the perfect one. For some people, it just matches and fits with them perfectly. There are other individuals who connect more with the Mahayana path, the path of training in as a foundation, a sense of renunciation and weariness with samsara. Of course, renunciation and weariness with samsara, that's a given. But on top of that, then in the Mahayana, the focus is really to cultivate love and compassion and bodhicitta. And the best method, we can say, from all of the different methods, the one that is the superior method is the method of cultivating love and compassion and bodhicitta. And the best or the most superior form of wisdom is Mahashunyata, great emptiness. So Maha Karuna, great compassion, and Mahashunyata, great emptiness. These two together, when we train in them in an indivisible way or as a unity, form the foundation of the Mahayana path through which we traverse the 10 bodhisattva bhumis, the 5 paths that lead to the state of great awakening. And the result that comes from that great awakening is a state in which we achieve our personal aims through accomplishing the Dharmakaya for one's own benefit, you can say, and then achieving also the Rupakayas, the form bodies, the form kayas, which benefit others. This is what results through the genuine practice of the Mahayana. In Vajrayana practice, the main focus of our practice is on the training in the tantras, practicing the tantras. And there are different classes of tantra: Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, Yoga Niruttara Tantra. And for this kind of practice, in order to take up this kind of practice, we have to have a foundation in the aspects of the general vehicle of Buddhism, as well as the Mahayana, these central aspects. But when we think about the practice of the general vehicle of Buddhism, we say here that the most important aspect is actually renunciation, having a sense of renunciation. That's the root for the practice in the general vehicle of Buddhism. And that then brings about the contemplations in the sense of the absence of impermanence, like coming to, or the absence of permanence rather, coming to understand impermanence, coming to contemplate the lack of reality of phenomena, coming to understand that what we perceive ordinarily as clean is not clean, and understanding that there is not a self. And when training in that way, the result that a practitioner achieves is a state of arhatship. In Mahayana, as I just mentioned, the most important thing really is this unity of the method of great compassion and the wisdom aspect of great emptiness. And when these are practiced together as a unity, then one can achieve the results of awakening that comes through Mahayana practice. And they do have to be practiced together, though, because to focus simply on the aspect of methods without wisdom is leads to, it's diluted, it's confused. And to focus exclusively on the aspect of wisdom and leave out the methods, that also is a diluted kind of perspective. So it's essential that the aspect of method and wisdom are brought together as one. So the method really here is, sometimes we can say the method is great compassion. Another way that we can talk about the methods are among the 6 perfections, the first 5. So being generous, being disciplined, being patient, being diligent and practicing meditation. These 5 aspects of method then lead the practitioner to be able to engage in the 6th of the 6 perfections, which is the aspect of wisdom. And that means coming to genuinely realize the natural state, the profound true nature, the natural state of all things. And when we train in this way, this leads through swift progress on the 10 bodhisattva bhumis. It leads us to progress swiftly through the 5 paths, and we can arrive at the state of perfect awakening, as is described in the mantra Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond to awakening. And so this is encapsulates, you can say, the Mahayana path. Then when it comes, again, coming back to the Vajrayana, we can really say that the complete Vajrayana teachings are genuinely and fully preserved in Tibetan Buddhist systems, actually, not in other Buddhist systems. Yes, some of the tantras did spread to other countries. In China, the Kriya and Charya tantras did circulate there, as well as a little bit in Japan. Not totally sure the degree to which the lineages of empowerment and transmission remain in those places, but nonetheless, those systems of Tantra did spread to those countries. But it was in Tibet where the full, all of the systems of Buddhist Tantra spread and flourished. So Buddhist practice in the Tibetan Buddhist context includes the foundational practice of the for the Pitakas, the baskets, the 3 Pitakas of the Buddhist teachings. And then on top of that, and in particular, the practice of the 4 classes of Tantra. So the main practice in Tibetan Buddhism is tantric practice. And if we want to practice Vajrayana, if we want to do tantric practice, the most important thing is to have devotion and pure perception. That's also the most difficult. Compared with that, renunciation and weariness with samsara is pretty easy. And compared with renunciation and weariness with samsara, then of course, it's more difficult to give rise to love and compassion and bodhicitta. That's what we need for Mahayana practice. That's hard, right? Because it doesn't mean just for some sentient beings. It means everybody without a single exception. And having that's foundational. And we can't practice Mahayana really at all unless we have that kind of foundational, unbiased love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So that's harder than renunciation and weariness with samsara. But even more difficult than that kind of love, compassion, and bodhicitta is the pure perception and devotion that is foundational for Vajrayana practice. And so when we cultivate love and compassion and bodhicitta, then in the Mahayana, it's extremely powerful because it allows us to realize emptiness. And because that kind of love and compassion and bodhicitta, unbiased bodhicitta, also allows us, we can through that purify all of the negative emotions that we've accumulated since beginningless time in samsara. That happens through bodhicitta. And bodhicitta also allows us to accumulate immense quantities of merit. And so unchanging bodhicitta is something that's extremely, extremely precious and important in the context of Mahayana practice. But here we're talking about unchanging bodhicitta. That means not that we have it sometimes, but not at other times. And it means that we constantly have this wish for all beings to be happy and have the causes of happiness, and for all beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. That's what we call love and compassion. And so having that kind of love and compassion in an unbiased way towards all sentient beings, giving rise to that kind of pure intention, that bodhicitta, that itself accumulates an immense amount of merit. That itself purifies an immense amount of negativity. And that's why through practicing in the Mahayana, we can progress quickly on the grounds and paths that lead to awakening through that kind of great compassion, Mahakaruna. In Vajrayana, which spread in Tibet and now has really spread from Tibet and the Tibetan Buddhist practices all over the world, there's something that it's very important for us to know. And that is that the foundation for Vajrayana practice is the view, the genuine view. It's extremely important. Just renunciation is not enough as a foundation for Vajrayana practice. We have to have the view, confidence in the view. And when we talk about the view, we're talking about the Mahayana, the views that are taught in a Mahayana philosophical context. So either the view of mind only or Madhyamaka. Ideally Madhyamaka, if not that, then the view of mind only. We say everything that appears and exists is the magical display of the mind. Grant your blessings that I may come to recognize my nature. The self-aware three kayas are spontaneously present. Grant your blessings that I may become stable within this recognition. So here, talking about the mind, mind only, this kind of view, or the view of the middle way. When we have confidence in one of those views, then the practice of deity and mantra and samadhi becomes genuine Vajrayana practice. So samadhi here, we talk about the three samadhis, right? When we do Vajrayana sadhana, we have to practice within the framework of the three samadhis, the samadhi of suchness, the all-illuminating samadhi, the samadhi of the seed syllable. And we have to have that kind of framework for our practice, because if we don't, then we're not practicing genuinely. And in order to practice those samadhis, we have to have the genuine view. We can't practice them correctly without the view. So the view is really essential. We often think when it comes to Vajrayana, oh yeah, to practice Vajrayana, we need empowerment. Yeah, that's true, but actually it's not sufficient. It's not a sufficient condition. To practice Vajrayana genuinely correctly, we have to have the view. It's an absolutely essential foundation for Vajrayana practice. And we can come to gain that view in different ways. So there's the approach of studying and reflecting on the view. And there's the approach of training in the pith instructions. And, you know, if we have the opportunity, the blessings, the approach of the transference of blessings, so powerful. With these three methods, relying upon one of these three methods, we can come to gain confidence, certainty, really, in the view of mind only or the middle way. And then with the certainty in that view, when we practice deity, when we practice mantra, when we practice samadhi, then the path is swift. Then it's possible to really make very swift progress on the path to perfect awakening. It's easy to achieve the state of awakening. It's easy. We're able to train in a way in which we perceive our body as empty appearance, in which we experience sound as empty resounding, in which we experience sensations as empty bliss, in which we experience the thoughts as the play of wakefulness. And when we're able to practice like that, genuinely, it doesn't take long. Our progress is discernible year by year, month by month, day by day. We perceive making progress, improvements in our practice, so that when we come to the result, it happens that people leave behind no physical remains. The attainment of rainbow body, when no physical remains are left behind, just disappearing into space. This kind of result is something that's possible. So this is when we practice Vajrayana genuinely, then this is the result that can come about. And how to practice is clear because it's been taught very clearly. It's not that we don't have access to the teachings that allow that reality to be our reality for practice. We do have access to those teachings, and it is possible. It just really comes down to whether or not we do it. It just really depends on whether or not we implement those practices. It depends on us. How do we practice well? Well, we need to have devotion and pure perception. And as we've already said, that's not easy. It's quite difficult. The root of devotion is remembering the kindness and the qualities of the Buddha and the teacher. So when we remember the kindness of the Buddha, we can just think to ourselves, if the Buddha hadn't appeared in this world, he wouldn't have taught the Dharma. If the Buddha didn't teach the Dharma, then the Dharma teachings would not be available in the world today. And if the Dharma teachings were not present in the world today, without access to study and contemplation on the teachings that the Buddha gave, I would not be able to attain liberation and omniscience. We simply wouldn't have access to that path without the kindness of the Buddha. So the Buddha is unbelievably kind. What are the Buddha's qualities? Wisdom and love. Wisdom and love. And what is it that brings about so much pain and suffering in the world? It's through having the afflictive emotions and through bias, our bias. So even if we have love, right, it's not really unbiased like the Buddha's love. I love you because you love me, and then love becomes kind of a business. That's not what the Buddha's love is like. The love of Buddhas is completely and totally unbiased. Great love, compassion, and bodhicitta. And in that sense, actually, the Buddha's, that kind of love is what we have to be able to cultivate and to train in ourselves if we want to traverse the path. So that kind of great love is the kind of love that is embodied, the quality that's present within the Buddhas, the awakened state, and also a great wisdom, a great wisdom. And this is something that we can come to learn about more and more through connecting with the teachings of the Buddha. It's important for us to give rise to those qualities if we want to awaken. We have to give rise to love, great love and compassion, unbiased love and compassion and wisdom, if what we're pursuing is the state of Buddhahood or awakening. But it's not just for that. Honestly speaking, it's not just for liberation and omniscience. Even if we want some kind of happiness in this life, then it's impossible to obtain that without love and compassion. This world, actually, without love and compassion, this world becomes like hell, actually, a hellish world here in our experience here in this world. And if we get caught up in the afflictive emotions, if we don't cultivate that kind of love and compassion, then our experience becomes a hellish one. And on the other hand, if we cultivate love and compassion, then the experience of this world can become like a heavenly realm, a pure realm. And so if we think about sentient beings, if we think about our situation right now in the world, sentient beings have always had negative emotions, and we still have negative emotions. It's not like we have more negative emotions now than we used to, but what we have are more conditions that are afflictive, conducive to affliction. For example, if you think about how people used to engage in wars, right? They threw stones at each other and then maybe shot some arrows, right? And then gradually warfare developed to guns. You could shoot with guns. Now, someone can just use a finger or two to press a button that destroys an entire village, an entire countryside, a city. We can destroy countries. We can reduce the entire world to dust just through the press of a button. So those kind of technologies that are available have changed. And that actually changes the way in which the world is present. So the world is around us. So we need, actually, in this time, if we really want there to be happiness in the world, we need the path that the Buddha taught, which is the path, the non-violent path of peace and ease. This is something that the whole world needs. If we want there to be happiness and peace in the world, then we need to rely upon these kind of teachings. And if we do, then this, as we said, the world, rather than becoming a hellish state, can become like a pure realm. But if not, if we don't rely upon that kind of path that leads, the path that is free from harm and the path that is peaceful, then the world can and does become a hellish place. We can reduce the entire world to dust. And so now there are more and more people that are interested in the Buddhist teachings all over the world. And it's important for us to have access to the full range of the Buddhist teachings, in the sense that we know, okay, there's a general vehicle of Buddhist practice. Here's its purpose and here's its benefit. Maybe this is the one. If I want to engage in it, I can see what its purpose is, and I can see what the benefit is. And then there's the Mahayana. This also has a purpose, and there's also a benefit and a result that comes from Mahayana practice. And then there's the Vajrayana, right? And then if we come to understand, oh yeah, well, when it comes to Vajrayana practice, what's most essential is the view. We have to have the view in order to be able to practice genuinely and correctly. And so in this way, actually, we can acknowledge that the real root of the Dharma is emptiness and compassion. Sometimes we say the root of the Dharma is just emptiness and compassion. If a shepherd realizes that, then the shepherd becomes a Buddha, awakens. And if a pundit, a scholar, does not realize that, then the pundit will continue to wander in samsara. So this is a saying that we have, but it indicates how important that emptiness and compassion is as the foundational aspect of Buddhist practice. Compassion is essential for Shravakayana practitioners. We have to have compassion to practice the general vehicle of Buddhist teachings. Compassion is essential for the practitioners of the Mahayana. It's essential for Vajrayana practice. It's an absolutely crucial part. In the Shravakayana, when we bring to mind compassion, we think about the suffering that's present within all sentient beings and working to overcome the suffering. In the Mahayana context, we think about the fact we can bring to mind and contemplate that all sentient beings have as their basic nature, Buddha nature. Buddha nature is present within all sentient beings. And we talk about obscured suchness and unobscured suchness, right? So we can talk about this state in which the suchness, the basic nature, is obscured by temporary stains. And then that can gradually become unobscured suchness, which is the state of awakening. In Vajrayana, we say all sentient beings are Buddhas, but they're obscured by the temporary stains. And when those stains are cleared away, their Buddhahood becomes manifest. And so in this sense, we can also say that from the perspective of someone who wishes to pursue the path to liberation, sentient beings and Buddhas are equally kind. Without the Buddhas, we wouldn't know how to practice the path that leads to liberation. But without sentient beings, who would be the object of our generosity? How would we practice patience? We need an object to practice patience. And so without sentient beings, we don't have actually the ability to traverse the path that leads to awakening. So for those of us who seek the path of liberation that leads to liberation and omniscience, for us, sentient beings and Buddhas are equal in their kindness. Not only that, but all sentient beings have been our own mothers and fathers. And all of them have as their basic condition Buddha nature. It's present as the most fundamental nature of all beings. When we think about the basic condition of beings, we have to say that the realization of the Buddhas of the three times and the basic nature of sentient beings is identical. It's identical. It's simply a difference between being in an impure state, a pure state, or an extremely purified state. But that basic nature is not different. It's either just obscured or not. So we talk about clearing away the two obscurations, right? The two obscurations and all the habitual patterns that are connected with them, that's what obscures our basic nature. And when we clear away those obscurations and all the habit patterns connected with them, then what happens is that the two aspects of wisdom fully and completely unfold: the wisdom that knows all phenomena that there is to know, and that the wisdom that knows things exactly as they are. And that's a state of perfect awakening. We'll leave it here for today.
Before we sleep, very important, the mind state. We need to live with calm and kind sleep. Sleep also good. Hold during sleep is virtue. If before sleeping, if we have anger or jealousy, they really affect that for physically and mentally it sort of bad habitual. So this is very important. Okay, thank you. Catherine, thank you. How many of you watching? From where? Can I see? Is there photo?
Yeah, I think they can show you the photos, Rinpoche.
Yeah. Today, this is sort of suddenly, yeah? Suddenly. Oh, my doctor. My Dr. Shlim will come here soon and he will give a talk. It's very important talk about medicine and compassion, and especially those who are doctor or nurse or medical, yeah. So please come to listen his talk. It's very important. Please tell to other also. When I look, I saw past my Dr. Shlim. So I remember he's coming very soon here. What date? I don't know. Some of you maybe know. So please, I want all of you to know that and come. Oh, many from where? Oh my goodness. So nice. Wow, you're all very fortunate because your interest and listening, interest to listen Dharma, that is very smart. It's very smart, very fortunate. Wow, so many. Okay. Oh, Michael. I saw Michael and Alan, American High.
Yeah.
I saw. Oh, my goodness.
Shireen, she got
yeah.
up in the middle of the night.
Oh, my night is very late. Nepal?
Yeah.
Very late. Midnight. Oh, I know most of them. I know. Oh. Well,
I want to go back.
I know. Yeah. Extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve.
Steve. And this? Oh, yeah.
Maggie.
Mikey. Oh, yeah. Mikey. Doctor?
Yeah.
Lawyer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We missed.
Maggie is.
Oh,
husband.
Tom. Where's Tom?
Oh, I know. Oh, Anila, I say. Okay, this from what national?
I don't know.
Can you see one more? Yeah. Bhutan, Sikkim.
Let's see here.
Not Bhutan.
And then we go first page. And more people. See
Oh,
again.
yeah. Oh, very nice. Excellent. Wow.
See.
Okay,
Joanne.
Joanne, we miss you. You need to come back to Nepal. Joanne and Kate. So sweet. You look healthy. Okay. Why? Wow. I remember seeing the photo of face, but sorry, I don't remember name.
And there we are.
Huh?
And there we are. At the beginning.
Okay.
So,
Okay. 다게 손놈 디네 심장 탐지 말리바 대파 탐지 빵네 따디 개와 제버쇼 장수 섭다 메달시 장수 쫄라 셜로쇼 산제 남지 용송시 유젤레나 뽕르쇼 케트릴라 can you translate me? You might remember.
And thus,
Yes.
by the merit I have gained, may every being, leaving none aside, abandon all their evil ways, embracing goodness now and evermore. From bodhicitta, may they never separate and constantly engage in bodhisattva's deeds, and may they be accepted by the Buddhas and turn aside from what is demon's work.
This is words of Shantadeva and Bodhisattva, Tara Avatara. Bodhisattva in the 10th chapter inside mentioned. So I like this very much. So I often dedicate this way. So please, all of you, this sentence are very touching. Okay, thank you. Little bit late. Sorry. Good night. I'm in England, and a few purpose where I came here. One is we discussing about the temple here because we got permit. One place we got permit is in Doncaster in England, and beautiful land, and they put already foundation. So last year when we went there, I thought it's a little bit too small. So now we make it a big foundation. And please pray this building will come soon, because we have beautiful land, giant land. I think you saw the picture. And interesting is we got permit. Only one they got permit. So this is in Doncaster. Okay. And second is some professor who lived in London, and he passed away, and they give his library many books, 44, 5 boxes, maybe 50 boxes. 250. Huh? 250 boxes. So I and Kimball and Lama said we all are looking, checking. We try to find out some very unusual text or not. We're hoping still we're checking. Okay, good night, good morning, good afternoon. Also, please listen one more. Whoever listening, listen one more. And whoever not listening, let them listen. This talk went very well. Thank you. I also feel. Thank you, Rubusila Tuche. I say myself Tuche. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Oh, thank you. Good night.
Good night.